Hey guys, it's the Grim Reader here. Today's video is going to be a collaboration with Unit 522, my personal favourite in the horror narrating community. None of you actually know this, but Unit 522 is probably the biggest reason why this channel started to grow. I mean, he collaborated with me when I had around 200 subs and was barely getting any views, and I really am grateful for his help. Both in the description and at the end of this video you'll find a link to his channel and a video featuring me, so be sure to go over there and check it out, and of course show him some love. Also, I want to take this opportunity to say thank you. We've just hit 8,000 subs, and I know I didn't do a thank you video at 1,000 or 5,000 subs, but I was really busy, so forgive me. With that said, thank you once again, and here's today's content. Number 1. When I was in my teens, my friend Robert and I would often visit Forest Glen National Park. It's a national forest preserve that's located just about 15 miles from my hometown. It offers camping, fishing, and most importantly for our purposes back then, many winding trails to hike on. Robert and I didn't have a whole lot to do back in the day, so Forest Glen is where we would go to spend a lot of our time. Both of us enjoyed the outdoors, and we would go hiking on one of the many trails nearly every day. Sometimes we'd do 2 or 3 depending on our mood. It wasn't long, of course, before we knew them all by heart, and we both had favourites. That didn't matter though, as we would still go in any of them on any given day. Eventually though, time went on and Robert and I grew up. Robert and I are still good friends, but we hadn't been out to Forest Glen in a long time. It was recently that I had been reminiscing about those old trails though, and I decided that I wanted to go back out there and visit some of my favourite spots. So, 2 weeks ago, I called Robert and asked if he wanted to go back out there with me that weekend, and to my surprise, he was overjoyed at my proposal. He said he'd been thinking about going out there himself, but just hadn't gotten around to it. So, it was decided, on Saturday morning, we would head out to Forest Glen and meet up at one of Robert's favourite trails. I made it out to the trail at Forest Glen about 10 after 6 in the morning. When I drove out to the reserve, I parked my car in the spot closest to the trail, but I didn't see Robert's car. There's more than one entrance in the park, so I thought that Robert hadn't arrived yet, or he was parked at one of the spots that was near one of the other entrances. I thought I might call him, but when I looked at my phone, I saw that I only had one bar, and I figured that it wouldn't go through. I should have known the reception would be bad out there. Stashing the phone in the glove box, I got out and made my way to the trail. I started to do some stretches in front of the trail entrance while I waited for Robert to arrive. After waiting for what felt like about 10 minutes, I began to wonder if Robert was going to show up late. When we made the plans to show up at the trail, we agreed on 6:30 AM. I thought about jogging back to my car to grab my phone and call him after all, but I decided to instead venture into the trail a little ways and then return after a moment to see if he had shown up. I started my walk at a brisk pace into the opening of the trail. The clear patch of the trail's entrance quickly gave way to a narrow cleared path, surrounded on both sides by a thick growth of brush and tall trees. The trail seemed a bit more overgrown than I remembered, but I suppose that was a good thing. It meant that the preserve was thriving. I did notice, however, that it was rather quiet out there on the trail. That isn't to say that there was no sound at all. I could hear the occasional call of a bird and the rustling of leaves, but the sounds seemed somehow muted. It was as if the entire woods had its volume button turned way down low. About 3 minutes into my stroll, I stopped just before a small stream that cut through the trail. I looked to the other side of the stream where all the trail's path resumed. The path stretched out a few hundred feet beyond the stream, and looks like it forked off in 2 different directions as far as I could tell. This is when I decided to turn back and wait for Robert at the entrance. I never knew this trail like Robert used to, and for the life of me, I couldn't remember how far it went. Before I turned to leave, I knelt down to tie my sneaker. When I finished, I stood up and had to stifle a scream. Robert was standing in front of me, grinning like an idiot, and when he saw the look on my face, he howled with laughter. My face went hot and I gritted my teeth. "What the hell, man?" I yelled. "You nearly gave me a freaking heart attack." Robert had to stifle his laughter to be able to reply.
"Sorry, bud. I couldn't help myself. I was up farther on the trail when I decided to turn back and wait for you. And when I saw you kneeling here, I just couldn't resist."
I couldn't help but smile after that, and I could feel the red-hot feeling in my face start to drain away. "It's okay, but you did scare the living hell out of me, man. I didn't even hear you." Robert said nothing. He only smiled, a wide, toothy grin. I gestured down towards the part of the trail Robert came from. "I was wondering if you had gotten out here yet. You can lead. I assume you know the way." Robert nodded in reply, then jerked his head back to where the fork in the trail was, before he turned around and bounded over the stream that divided the trail. When his feet hit the other side of the small bank, he just kept on running. "Hey, wait up!" I called after him. He acted as if he didn't hear me and carried on deeper into the woods. I really wasn't prepared to jog yet. I wanted to walk a little more first and stretch out my legs. However, it seemed I didn't have a choice, and I bounded after Robert, hopping over the stream and pushing myself to catch up with him. Robert was jogging at an even pace, but not a quick one, and soon I was just behind him. "Can you just wait a second?" I asked.
"Why? What are you afraid of?"
he asked, turning to me with a wide, toothy grin that seemed to have not left his face. The question caught me off guard. What did he mean by that? "Nothing, just need to stretch a little more before I pull something, you know." Robert didn't stop or slow down. He just kept on smiling as he turned his head back around to face forward.
"You'll be fine. There's a nice place to rest, just after the fork on the trail."
We kept on jogging until we hit the fork, and I followed just behind Robert every step of the way as we veered off onto the right path. Shortly after the fork, the trees of the forest grew denser and numerous, their leaves blotting out light from the sky above. Even the path itself started to become more overgrown as weeds and brush seemed to reach out towards the center of the path, attempting to catch what sunlight they could. Where before it seemed that the sounds of the forest were on low volume, here they seemed to be on mute, as not even a buzzing of an insect could be heard. Though I could attribute the muted sounds of the forest to not being able to hear them over my heavy breath and stomping feet, the dense growth could not be ignored. "This trail doesn't seem very well maintained. Are you sure you know where you're going?" I asked Robert, still keeping close pace behind him, though my right leg was starting to burn. Robert didn't answer, but ignored me instead without slowing down. I stopped and knelt down to rub my leg. I looked up to see Robert stop and turn around to walk back to where I was kneeling. "Sorry, man. I told you though I needed to stretch more. I think I already hurt myself." Robert just smiled as he leaned on a tree next to me.
"Sorry, man. I thought you'd be able to make it. We're not far from a really cool spot. I just got excited to be out here with you again."
At Robert's words, I couldn't help but laugh and return a beaming grin back to him. I had no idea he missed being out here so much. On top of that, it had been a couple of weeks since we had done anything together, so maybe Robert also just missed hanging out. I couldn't blame him. I did too, but growing up gets in the way. "Don't sweat it, man," I said. "I really missed this too. What's the really cool spot you wanted to show me?" Robert's grin seemed to somehow get even bigger.
"Okay, do you remember the wooden bridge we found on one of the last times we were out here? It has that really deep stream running under it."
The memory came back to me in a rush. It was vague, but I did remember finding a bridge the last time we came out here. I had completely forgotten which trail we had found it on though. I remember the water under the bridge was so clear you could easily see the fish swimming about within it. "It's on this path?" I asked excitedly.
"It sure is, and I can't wait to take you there. I've been down here already. It's absolutely beautiful,"
Robert said. I stood up quickly and brushed some dirt off of my knee. "Well, let's go," I exclaimed, walking forward on the trail.
"Okay, but we can walk. I don't want you to hurt yourself again,"
Robert said. I was going to tell him I would be fine if we jogged again, but I thought better of it. Though the excitement that came with the prospect of seeing that bridge again abated some of the pain in my sore leg, it was still there. So we walked on, talking about the memories of being out here on the trails as we walked side by side. Robert was recounting things I hardly remembered. He said he remembered a time when he scraped my knees really bad after a nasty fall on one of the trails, but I didn't remember that. For the most part though, I could recall every memory that Robert had, and I realized how much time we really spent out here. We spent nearly all our time out here as teenagers, staying in shape to try to impress the girls in school. We had been walking for nearly 5 minutes when Robert said,
"Hey, do you remember when you fell down that slope and hit the bottom? I thought you died."
Robert belted out a loud booming laugh. I stopped walking because something about what he said didn't make sense. I remembered falling down that slope like it was yesterday. It was terrifying. "Robert, you fell down that slope too, remember?" Robert, who hadn't stopped walking until then, froze just ahead of me. He turned slowly to me and slapped a hand to his forehead.
"Oh, duh. Yeah, well, I didn't fall as hard as you."
Robert laughed again, dropping his head and gesturing back down the trail.
"Come on, we're almost there."
I began to breathe heavily and I took a step back. Something was wrong. I didn't know what it was, but I had to get out of those woods and away from Robert. I had to get away because a memory had finally resurfaced to the shore of my recollection. A memory of me falling and scraping my knees. Robert's grin, for the first time since he snuck up behind me, faded from his face.
"What's wrong, bud?"
he asked, a little shaky. "I need to go back," I said, a little shaky myself. Robert took a step towards me and a look of concern spread on his face.
"Come on, man, we're so close. Why do you want to leave?"
he pleaded. "Because you were home sick the day that I scraped my knees." Robert's eyes widened in realization as I turned tail and began sprinting in the other direction as fast as my legs would carry me. Green leaves and brown bark flashed by in my peripheral vision as a blur. The sound of wind swished around in my earlobes as I ran. I couldn't hear footsteps behind me, and I was thankful for that. My right leg throbbed and begged for me to stop, but I wouldn't. Fear is one hell of a motivator, and it pushed me past the fork in the path and over the small stream that divided the trail. I never looked back if Robert, or whatever wore Robert's skin, was following me. Not even once. I kept my eyes on the path in front of me and focused on not tripping over anything the whole way back out of the trail. I didn't stop running until I got into my car. Once inside, I grabbed the keys that I left sitting in the passenger seat and quickly turned them in the ignition. I paid no attention to the speed limit as I raced all the way home. Once at my house, I grabbed my phone out of the glove box and ran into the house, latching the deadbolts behind me. I turned my phone off when I stored it in the car at the preserve, so once I got inside, I turned it on and sat on my couch while I waited for it to boot up. My plan was to call Robert immediately, but when the display on the screen flicked on, I saw I had a text message from Robert. I opened it, but I was shaking so bad from the adrenaline, it was a little hard to read. "Hey man, so it looks like we can't go out to Forest Glen. I was talking to my neighbor this morning, and he said they closed it down because at least 4 hikers have been found dead by drowning out there. I hope this gets to you before you leave, man, but we could just catch a movie or something." When I read the last word of the text message, there was a loud knock at my door. I jumped and stood from my spot on the couch. The knock came again, even louder, and I crept over to the door as quietly as I could, looking through the peephole. It was Robert. Robert stood on my front stoop with a wide, toothy grin. I saw him raise up his hand to knock once more, and as the sound thundered from the wood of the door, I backed away. On my phone, I searched my contacts for Robert's name and dialed. After 2 rings, Robert picked up.
"Hey man, what's up?"
Robert asked.
Robert, where are you right now?
I asked.
"Well, I'm at the store right now. Do you want..."
His voice cut out as I hung up and immediately began dialing the police. I explained to the dispatcher that there was an intruder trying to break into my house and I did not feel safe. The woman on the other end told me to remain calm and she would be sending help to my address. When I hung up with 911, I went to the door once again and looked through the peephole. The thing that was pretending to be Robert was gone. When the police arrived, I just told them someone tried to break into my house and I came home to find them messing around with my door before they ran off. I didn't know what else to say. They said they would file a report and send a squad car by every couple of hours that day to make sure everything was fine. This was 2 weeks ago. I don't know what the hell is in Forest Glen National Park, but it followed me home.
Number 2. After graduation, my best friend Hannah and I took a weekend trip to New Orleans. I was more than excited for this adventure. A new grad, 21 years old, with my partner in crime in the city of sex, sin, booze, and voodoo. Our trip was great. The drive is sort of long from North Carolina, but luckily Hannah is a speed demon, and she just drove the whole way. I fell in love with those old houses in the French Quarter. We went to the Café de Monde for donuts. Holy cow, I think I gained more weight from the food in New Orleans than I did in my entire freshman year in college. I'm going to be honest with you. Bourbon Street was not my favorite. It smelled bad. Creepy men tried to get us into their strip clubs. Street actors roamed the streets. Random people, some drunk and some homeless, just randomly approached you. But my best friend loved it. Things did not start getting weird until Saturday night. We were out on Bourbon Street despite my protests. My end goal was Pat O'Brien's, the dueling piano bar in New Orleans, and home of the hurricane. The pianists were excellent. Absolutely fantastic. I didn't want to leave, but my best friend wanted to go experience bourbon nightlife. So we departed from the relative safety of the bar for the wild and dark street. Right across the street from Pat O'Brien's is a voodoo shop, and we decided that it would be a good idea just to walk in. Just walk in though. No touching, no buying, just looking. The shop was cluttered with random touristy stuff, clearly catering to the drunken masses that came in from out of town. I wandered further off into the shop and found myself in a darker, dingier back room. My alarm bells were going off, and I turned to bolt from the room just to come face to face with a person covered in head to toe in fabric, rich dark purples, maroons, and dusty grays. I couldn't see his or her face. I stammered out an apology and tried to move around them, but they would not move. The sheer fabrics moved in and out with a shallow, raspy breath. I heard my name being called, and I spotted Hannah over the shrouded figure's shoulder. I began to try to squeeze my way past the figure, and they shifted out of my way slightly. As I was almost out of reach, a hand shot out of the abundance of fabrics and grabbed my upper arm. Something burned like fire, and I swear I heard muttering as I yanked my arm free and sprinted to the front of the store. I grabbed my best friend's hand and dragged her from the store as fast as possible. I let her take me into what felt like every other bar for the rest of the night, but I couldn't shake this feeling that there was someone following us. I was afraid of who I would see if I turned around. We got back to our hotel about 2 blocks from Bourbon Street by 3 a.m. It would have been later had I not begged her to go back. Hannah climbed into her bed, too drunk to care how dirty she was from our Bourbon Street adventures. I couldn't imagine getting into bed dirty, so I went to shower. I noticed the huge blue-purple mark left on my upper arm as I was undressing. I bruise ridiculously easy, so I just passed it off as some miscellaneous bruise I received while being bumped around getting in and out of clubs and bars earlier in the evening. I shower and everything is peaceful and warm, but when I got out of the shower, the words, "Get out," are sprawled across the top of the mirror. The door was still locked from when I first entered the bathroom, and I know the mirror was clear this morning when I took the last shower. I was significantly creeped out. I wiped down the mirror, pulled on my pajamas, climbed into bed, and went to sleep. After a restless sleep, Sunday was thankfully our last day in New Orleans. We did some sightseeing and walked the city later in the afternoon once Hannah was mostly recovered from her hangover. We were perusing the art at Jackson Square when I got that feeling like someone is breathing down your neck. I turn around, but there is no one behind me. There was someone on the corner of the street instead. Someone was standing there, shrouded in a cloud of billowy fabrics of ruby reds, wine purples, and stormy grays. While I couldn't see their face, I knew that they were watching me. Sunday night was exponentially worse than Saturday. Our last night in our hotel room, I packed most of our things up earlier in the day while Hannah was busy emptying her breakfast into the toilet. When we keyed into the room, it was a disaster. Our clothes were everywhere. My bag was emptied and tossed across the room. The beds were pulled apart with the pillows thrown in all different corners of the room. Hannah made a beeline for the bathroom to check on our jewelry and shrieked. I followed her and saw it immediately. The message was back, this time with an addition. "Get out. We warned you." Hannah and I gathered our belongings and demanded that we be moved to a new room for the last night in New Orleans. This room was smaller than the first room, one bed instead of two. Hannah and I were no strangers to snuggling when it was necessary for the occasion, so it was really no problem. Anything to get us out of that first room. We got into bed early Sunday night. We had a long drive ahead of us on Monday morning. Around 1 a.m., I woke up suddenly with my heart racing. Hannah was lying next to me, still fast asleep, but there was something moving in the room. I could hear rustling near the end of the bed. Neither Hannah nor I were moving. The sheets and blankets on Hannah's side of the bed began to shift and move, and then Hannah was suddenly sitting upright, screaming. Her eyes were wide open and her body was flailing around. I grabbed at the lamp on my bedside table until the room was flooded with light, and Hannah instantly slumped back into the bed. The sheets once again laid flat. Hannah's eyes were still open, and she was looking at me with fear. She reached up with one hand and grabbed my upper arm where my bruise was and whispered, "Something just grabbed my ankles." She then dissolved into tears, letting her hand drop from my arm. It didn't take her long to fall back asleep after I assured her that it was just a bad dream and that it didn't really happen. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. I left the lamp on and laid there, waiting for the morning, ready to go home. We left as early as I could manage, practically dragging Hannah from the hotel half asleep. I took the first driving shift, speeding out of there like a bat out of hell. It wasn't until we stopped for gas that I noticed my bruise had spread and elongated towards the inside of my bicep. It was now a gray purple-green color. We made it all the way back to North Carolina in one piece, but I'm pretty sure I started to hallucinate when we crossed out of Louisiana. I kept seeing a gray figure out of the corner of my eye as I was driving, but when I would turn to look, there would be nothing there. We got home early Monday evening, just in time for dinner with my parents. Hannah and I attempted to watch TV with my family, but ended up going to bed and falling asleep not too long after dinner. I woke up to my pitch-black room echoing with raspy whispers. I was alone. Hannah was in our guest bedroom down the hall. I tried to reach for the lamp I usually kept on the floor next to my bed, but it wasn't there. I suddenly remembered I had let my sister borrow it before I went to New Orleans. The whispers were getting louder. I bolted out of the bed to switch on the light in my room. As soon as the light came on, the voices stopped. After inspecting my room, I turned off the light and climbed back into bed. I was too tired to deal with this. I was asleep only for about an hour when I felt something gripping my arm. Sleepily, I brushed Hannah away, but she wasn't there. There was nothing there, and my arm started to burn. Rolling out of bed again, I hit the light switch, and I swear there was a billowing shadow sliding off the far side of my bed. I didn't get much sleep for the rest of the night. I left the light on and laid down, watching the billowy shadow circling my ceiling while my arm continued to burn. Tuesday was hell. Hannah left by noon, and I went up to my room to sleep, only to find the light bulbs in my light smashed and the shrapnel spread over my bed. The blinds were also closed, and the room was dark, too dark for noon. I took one step over the threshold, and immediately I heard the whispering. I decided to take a nap on the couch downstairs. I woke up 9 hours later in my room, in my bed, in the darkness. I couldn't hear a sound coming from the rest of my house, almost as if my room had been soundproofed. A glance at the alarm clock told me that my parents should not have gone to bed yet, and shouldn't they have come up to see if I wanted dinner? I rolled out of bed, and as soon as my feet touched the floor, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. It was unreal. The air felt muggy and smelt like sewage, and the blackness was thick, almost tangible. It was like the smell of Bourbon Street had poured into my room. I reached out for my door handle, and as my hand made contact with the cool metal knob, something brushed against my side. I tried to yank my door open and bolt out of my room, but the door was stuck. I started shouting at the top of my lungs, pulling at the door with all my weight, when light flooded under the crack in the door and it swung open from the outside. My sister was standing there frowning at me. I'll probably get a good lecture for almost bowling over her as I sprinted out of that room, but I couldn't help it. I wish I could tell you that my shouts of obscenities drowned out the whispers in my ear, but I know what they said this time.
You're almost ours.
I didn't sleep at all last night, and let me tell you, I haven't slept at all today either. The bruise is now clearly in the shape of a hand, gray and purple. I watched the writing appear on my mirror while I was inspecting the bruise.
Almost time to go.
Typing all this out helped distract me today, but I still saw the shadows in the corners and behind the doors. And if the TV got quiet enough, I heard them speaking words to me. I took the nightlight from the bathroom and put it in my room this morning, hoping the light would keep the shadows away while I tried to get some sleep. I opened my eyes and I was standing outside my door with my hand on the knob. It's almost 1 a.m. now, and I got a flashlight with me, and I'm lying in my bed. It has flickered twice, and they're whispering songs to me, softly, like a bayou lullaby. They are here, in their billowy fabrics, in the corner by my closet. I think it's time to go.
Hey guys, it's the Grim Reader here. I hope you enjoyed listening through that. If you did, please slap a like, and if you haven't already, why not subscribe to be notified of future uploads? If you have a story you want me to narrate, please send it to my email in the description box. Once again, thanks a lot for listening.